I read through it. I'm amazed at the diversity of what you guys do and what you're tasked to achieve.
Yeah. Actually, Matt, do you want to do the
Yeah,
run through since you have the granular firsthand knowledge of how this
sure,
all
sure. Is
all
any chance you guys can put that on the screen by
Yeah,
share it?
John, do you mind sharing that? John,
I should have brought up my document before we got on this call.
Yeah, I don't have it up. Hold on. Let me.
Yeah.
Can we all, any of us share?
I can share the screen. Which document would you guys like for to be shared?
The one that says EEP duties.
Okay, I can share that on the screen.
Thank you. So I'll go through it with you guys. So while we're waiting for Peter to put that up, I think one of the things is historically our program was just primarily on-site sewage, and then we had this thing. It used to be known as body disposal, and then its more politically correct term would be disposition of human remains, and that was a very small percentage of our overall duties. It didn't entail a lot of work because it just there just wasn't a ton of these things being built across the state. In other words, crematories, mausoleums, and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't too bad. And even today, it's not that bad. Although I will say, it is getting more burdensome to us. Just to give you a little bit of background on that. Like, they're coming up with new and innovative ways of disposing of human remains. So one of them we just approved is called alkali hydrolysis. So it's like this highly alkaline solution. They put the body in and dissolves it. So basically, it's liquid cremation rather than burning a body. And then the latest thing is composting they want to do. So all of this stuff requires regulations to be written and rules and all that. So it's becoming an increasingly higher demand on our program. So that's definitely something that's up and coming. But I think the biggest thing on our duties that has been a total sort of slap down on us was the acquisition of public pools. So I've been the supervisor program for almost 4 years now. And so when the former supervisor retired, his wife actually was the person that it was called the recreation program. And so at that time, for whatever reason, someone thought they should put it under us, but they couldn't because they can't have a husband supervising a wife. So when she retired and he retired, they stuck with that protocol and said, let's put it over here. And unfortunately, that has become a huge burden. So we went from about 85% of our duties as subsurface sewage down to 50% at this point. And the sad thing is with pools and actually with human remains is both of them are going to require what I call overhauls of those programs, meaning all new regulation, updating the regulations, the statutes, everything. I mean, they just haven't been touched in a long time. So it's been a significant drain. And I don't know if this was stimulus money from years ago or whatever, but the amount of pools that have been coming in just seem to go through the roof. And just so you guys know, some of you guys here are home builders. As you know, any of these multifamily like apartment buildings and such, they're all luxury. So every one of them has a pool, and those are considered public pools. So we're getting dozens of those all the time. And what we didn't realize is the engineering involved in doing these reviews. It's not chemistry at all. It's all the hydraulics and piping and the requirements for the drains, just completely much more in depth than what we had ever expected. So that has been a significant drain. And the last two topics, family campgrounds, fortunately, there's not a whole lot to do with that. But we sort of do it because family campgrounds do include septic systems. They include pools, which are going to be regulated by us, and just in general, we do get inquiries on that. But fortunately, that's not too much. You see, and I don't see that changing. So that's probably the only one that's not really going to be is a burden or will be too much of a burden. And the last one is water treatment, wastewater. And what this is if you guys, just the easiest one to hone in on is water softeners. So if you have a water softener at your house or business or whatever, that meaning you're on a well, there's a waste product associated with it, backwashes, and it's a highly high brine solution. And for decades, it was under DEEP's jurisdiction, and they did nothing with it. So it was every homeowner across the state, when they did a real estate transaction, it was clear in our code that you couldn't discharge to a septic because it has an adverse impact on it. But there was no legal means of disposal. So the locals had to kind of deal with this. Until finally somebody put enough pressure on DEEP, they said, okay, and they gave it to us. And so we came up and we wrote, we wrote this into our technical standards and took it on board. So it's a whole nother separate leaching product, similar to a septic system. Just think of it, it's basically a septic system without a tank that takes this wastewater and discharges it back into the ground. So as you can see, the diversity of topics here is, as Matt pointed out, is great. I mean, and pretty much the only thing that's somewhat similar to what we do as far as on the sewage realm is the water treatment wastewater, just because it's a similar type of system. Everything else is completely different. It's created an enormous strain on my program. And I think all of you can appreciate this as well. Two things is, number one, the quality of candidates that we've gotten. So we've tried to put out, to hire people has been abysmal. And I attribute that to actually two things. I think one, the state in general, especially engineering salaries, are not that competitive. And the state no longer has all of the benefit structures that it normally used to have in the past. In other words, there's really no pension system and everything else. And yes, the medical benefits are good, but to young people, those just are not on their radar. So we just rarely attract good candidates. And just in general, I think the labor market in general is very tight for certain occupations, particularly engineering. And so it's been quite difficult. And I think the last thing to point out as far as new employees is that being at the state level, we generally are anything we deal with, especially on even just the septic, we don't deal with routine stuff. And so we're the go-to people for the locals to go to when they are kind of at their wits' end. So we're sort of like, I call ourselves the firemen, so to speak, where we're putting out fires, and the locals come to us all the time. We get a lot of phone calls, and whether it's emails or inquiries on interpreting the code, on what to do and things like that. So my point of saying all this is that even when we do get new staff, it takes years for them to acquire the skill set necessary to be productive. Because again, being at the state level, we're not doing routine septics, just going out and permitting things. We're getting the ones that the locals, some of which have been doing this for decades, are scratching their heads. And so you got to have a pretty good skill set and a good amount of experience to be able to answer those questions and be support of them. So it's just been extremely challenging. And then I think you guys can appreciate this. So some of you guys being homeowners, when I stepped into this, the immediate thing was you guys were coming at us. When I say you guys, the home builders were coming at us about our code and, questioning every aspect of it. And which obviously everybody has a right to do. But I think what that did is you see the responsibilities we had. So we basically had to drop everything and defend our code and everything else. So it's been a tough 4 years for me in particular, but I think my program in general has been, you know, it's been a rough time just because of the level of responsibility, the diversity of responsibility, and you know, the last thing, and I'll stop in a second, Pop, just 1 second. The last thing that I want to mention is, as we all know, that AT is coming our way. In other words, our way meaning DPH. And my concern is, I kind of see the writing on the wall that this may end up in my lap. Um, Under me as a supervisor, which would just that's literally impossible. The complexity of AT, it deserves its own supervisor, somebody that can actually, you know, make those decisions, because it's completely different with the O&M and everything else. So I just wanted to throw that in the mix. And then Bob, sorry to ramble on. Go ahead. I'm ready for it. If it's a question to me, I imagine.
Yeah, no, thank you, Matt. No, I appreciate the background, and this is really helpful. You know, we talked earlier about just not understanding all the things that you have on your plate. I guess the one question I would have is, we'd love to, as just the sewer working group, we'd go, all right, Matt, we want you to get rid of some of those other responsibilities and just focus on this. Obviously, there's other people in other departments within DPH that are going, yeah, my plate's full too. So who do we delegate it to if we come back with a recommendation to offload the pools, you know, being that's the largest percentage other than septics, or, you know, whatever, the crematoriums or whatever you want to do. But like, we'd
Sure.
have to probably have a follow-up of how we're gonna have you guys manage that within DPH if we're not gonna have you guys do it in your particular department.
Yeah,
Thoughts on
clearly
that?
that's a leadership decision. And you know, I have given them that information as well. You know, I let it be known that, you know, the issues facing, let's say, pools and body disposal, that there's a need to have more attention on those, that we just can't give it. But good point. And Adam, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No. That was essentially what I was gonna say something similar, but I think Bob, you also indicated too, it's like, yeah, we're stressed in a lot of areas, as you know, any state agency I'm sure would mention. So where else it goes, you know, that's ultimately, you know, internal decisions have to weigh all the factors that go into running a large multifaceted department that touches on a wide variety of areas. But so yeah, where it goes, you can't really speculate it. Where else it would go, I don't think we can really speculate it at this point. But yeah.
The other document that I wanted to give you guys, share with you, and I actually inquired about that to my manager, and she never got, well, she did get back to me. She said it's higher up, is the initiatives document, which talks about things that I think we should be doing more of, and those included like the soils training workshop, the training center in Ellington, a statewide database. And so those were the things that if we had more time, and obviously funding, and time would be, you know, taking away some of these responsibilities, that we could do those initiatives. And you know, just to give you guys an example too, when I took this program, my intention was to be my legacy. What I wanted was to be more proactive with the locals. And I historically, out of our group, we had, you know, just 3 engineers, and I used to spend a lot of time just having field offices, and still do to a certain extent at some of the local health departments. So literally, we were there, or I was there in the office, seeing things happen in real time. And so we're the people that are writing the rules and things like that. So to be able to see how it plays out in the real world, I thought was a indispensable asset. And to this day, I still try to do that as much as I can. And you know, one of the things that I'm trying to work on now is getting my team to do like topics from, you know, various health departments, engineers, installers, and so we could meet, let's say, every couple of months, you know, at a venue in one of the health departments, whatever. You know, I'm trying to work on that right now, and they gave me a list of topics of things that they want to talk about, and then I just go through them. And so I'd like to do more of that kind of stuff. It's just with these other responsibilities, you know, I can't even get out of the office. And You know, it's just been tough. And as you know, that kind of stuff pays dividends. I mean, when we go out there and we educate the locals and the installers and everybody else, things run smoother. You get your approvals faster because they understand how to move these things, and they're not, you know, or messing up. I mean, unfortunately, we do a lot of cleaning up of messes with local health departments. I mean, that was before I got on the phone with you guys. You know, I had somebody down in, you know, Fairfield County, a situation that they, you know, they let something go through, and now they're kind of backpedaling. So they come to us and we kind of unravel it and stuff like that. So we spend a lot of time trying to do stuff like that. You know, that affects home builders, everybody, homeowners. You know, their projects. We want to get these things moving along. So again, I'd like to focus on that kind of stuff more, and just need the time. And as far as the training goes, the resources, then you know, to do the funding of that training and stuff. And like I said, I mean, when you have a workforce that's better trained, everything runs more smooth. Workforce meaning the locals, they get the training and the understanding they need. They're gonna operate better. Everything's gonna get smoother. So
Yeah, Matt, like a little bit of what I'm hearing, and I don't think that we're qualified as part of our mandate, but like, you know, to reorganize and to silo your organization a little differently. You know, really allowing somebody to be a specialist in human waste, human remains disposal, and then somebody to be the pool person, the pool czar, if you will, for the state, and then allowing, you know, more of a siloed approach to wastewater, water treatment, and then maybe AT underneath that as well.
yes,
But like, you know, we can't, you know, we could maybe recommend that, but like obviously our mandate doesn't allow us to do that. Like that could be part of our third thing that we're going to talk about today with it, which is the brainstorming. Um, but I think that if you had an opportunity where you were more siloed, um, and more specialized within the DPH, do you think that you would have more of an ability to refocus and train on that individual mission area?
absolutely, 100%. And I think it's important to note too, Matt, that it's not just, and this is what I need to make clear to my leadership, and I've tried. It's not just that if I got more bodies and I had an individual could focus on campgrounds. You need a supervisor that can be separate, that can make those decisions, because a lot of those programs they need a lot of direction and a lot of high level decisions that need to be made. So it's not just staff that needs to do the duties of those programs. It needs to be um, delegated to a supervisor that can you know, give their attention to it.
A
So it's a
qualified
little,
supervisor with, you know, enough knowledge and experience in order to
yes.
drive that silo.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff, just to give you an idea, you know, with the human remains stuff, like if that was under me and I had enough time as a supervisor, I could do the research. Like I could look into the other states and stuff. I just don't have the time to do that. And the other thing that I will mention, our program historically was even the supervisor was working level, and I still am. So what does that mean? That means that I actually not only supervise the program, but I have my own region. So I'm actually doing the same tasks that my staff does. So I have to do that on top of supervising them and supposedly, you know, making these decisions, policy, not policy decisions, but decisions on, you know, how to move forward with, let's say, body disposal matters without having the time to do the research to understand even what's going on. I mean, like I said, these crazy new innovative ways of getting rid of bodies, it's you know, it's crazy. It just all of a sudden
You need somebody
exploded.
from the mob to help you out with that. They
Yeah,
got that stuff down for years.
yeah, there's some crazy stuff. I mean, I have to say, you know, as far as all the human race stuff, I don't really mind, and my people don't really mind as much because it's not that much of a drain, at least at the moment. But and it's fascinating, to be honest. We get to see a lot of cool stuff, to be honest. But it's just we don't have the time, or I call it the bandwidth, to focus on it. You know.
Excellent. Thank you guys for putting that together. I think that helps a lot. I just made a couple notes that we'll bring back up in our third topic today. but I think most of us were on the joint meeting last week. Is that correct? How did you feel like that meeting went?
I'd like to talk about that for a second. So, I think it kind of I think it kind of went a little bit way beyond what I think we should be focusing on. And again, not to say that any of those topics or the depth that they went into was not something that need to be talked about. I just think that people just got kind of they've got to hone in on what they want done because of this particular committee. There's a time frame associated with it and stuff like that. So I think they need to sort of consolidate down the key things that they think can be done rather than just this huge document that goes in 10 different directions. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Bob, you had a lot to say the other day. How do you feel like the conversation went?
Well, I'm so glad I got put on this committee because we all get along quite nicely compared to how those guys are. They get a little contentious. And maybe it's just, everybody's passionate about their position on it, but we seem to all be kind of on the same page. It's just how do we improve the process? And they're kind of, I don't know, felt like they were kind of all over the place, but I agree with Matt a little bit. They need to sort of hone down on, what are the handful of things that we really want to get out of this committee, or we're going to be here in February and go, there's 1,000 things to do and we don't even know where to start, and we've got nothing to bring back to the legislature. So, I
And
think
nobody's going to listen to us. Yeah.
yeah. So we got to really, as a total group, I guess we're talking again tomorrow afternoon, I think, right?
Hmm.
Um, that we're starting to hone in on those handful of things that we can really accomplish that kind of moves the bar to get something done here. So I don't know about anything specific, but I just think there's a lot of stuff that was talked about and we just have to focus.
Yep. Jim?
Good morning. I think they focus on us because of our title, process and funding. And if you look at even their bullet comment number 1, need for a substantial local health funding source. So I think they're looking at us in order to come up with all their grand ideas. Is of course funding is going to be the key issue, and that's something that we have to look up, that we have to look at. So it was a semi eye opener, but I also have to agree with Matt there. It was too broad and not focused on the task that they want to go.
Right. Is there anything specific we want to talk about? Any specific topics we want to revisit? Because at some point we have to actually come up with, and we need to start that brainstorming process today. We have to say, okay, these are the 5 things that we want, to focus on from our position. Is there anything else we want to talk about from that meeting before we start brainstorming what we want our input to be?
I brought it up at that meeting, and I'll bring it up here again, especially for you builders. When you apply for a building permit, you are paying a portion of that, or you're adding on the educational fee in that permit fee. And then when you apply to any land use applications, you are paying a land use fee, a deep fee that goes which is about $60 that goes to the general fund at deep. Maybe we need to look at, is there a fee that we attach to all septic permits, or a dedicated line item or dedicated budget item, i.e. let's say education, that goes in line with the building permits and land use applications. If we want to fund something, then let's draw the money that's coming from the work that's associated. So that would be money that we grab for septic permits. We grab permits when we do public pool inspections. permits when we grant water treatment systems. So out of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out of those 5 items listed in the environmental engineering programs, local health departments, health districts, if there was an established fee associated with that permit, then that can go into some type of fund in order to fund those activities, i.e., training. Let's stick with training and education. It's something that I think, me personally, that we should look into. Even though that
Yeah.
Matt, you jumped all over me that it's an extra fee, but it's a fee
Basically, the fee's tied to the work.
Yeah, fee tied, right, it's a fee tied to the work, and we can't do the point of service, but it's a fee tied to the work associated with that permit.
Anything else from that meeting before we start to brainstorm? So at some point we have to make our recommendations. Let's start throwing ideas against the wall, and I'll write them down. And John, I'm standing in a hotel lobby, so if you could take some good notes too, that'd be much appreciated.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, I think the thing that I think, well, the problem with a lot of smart, passionate people is that, yeah, we do tend to see how things are, one concept leads to another, and like, oh, if we're talking about that, well, we should talk about this too. I'm kind of curious on how we would, and we I don't know how much thought we really put into sort of the divisions of the subcommittees. And we're process and funding, but what the hell does funding mean? Is it funding for municipalities to expand community systems or sewer lines? Is it funding to hire and train more sanitarians and subject matter experts and that sort of thing? It's probably both, right? But I do think that, yeah, providing more expert support and review is pretty critical, and I think particularly at the DPH level or regional health level, depending on how this, or probably both. But I just wanted to reinforce Jim's point, and this was kind of one of the few things I piped in at last week's meeting, is precisely that $60 land use fee, which was originally intended to help with land use analysis at the regional and state level, really, needs to go back there. The trick being, that's going to be a huge fiscal note, because then that's money coming out of the general fund that has to be backfilled some other way. But it would be nice to, it's a specific user fee for a thing, and it would just be nice in general to get state government to charge those user fees to a use that actually relates to the reason for the fee. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a solid recommendation, is to take the land use fee bill and actually direct it towards its aim.
And I think we would have universal support from across this committee, all the committees, is making some kind of recommendation that fees associated with review and planning of these systems has to stay within the DPH organization and offset the cost, and also be appropriate to the cost. So if it takes 40 hours for Matt to review a system that's 6,500 gallons per day, then the fee needs to be to cover that 40 hours. Like, it has to be commensurate to the service that's being provided. But that's it. Like, it's not, it can't be, it has to align, and maybe it doesn't cover the whole percentage, but it is commensurate to the service that's being provided. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll let Jim
I think that's an accounting nightmare. I think if we're going to establish a fee associated with the use, it should be an agreed upon fee. Building for the building permit for their education fee to go up to the state. It's 29 cents per
Per
thousand,
square foot.
or 26 cents per
That's it.
$1,000. So we need to establish a very simple but proper, fee for each permit. $60 fee for for a land use application. Are we going to just tie in any septic permit is going to be additional $50, and that $50 goes up to the state. But to sit there and calculate how many hours, I understand what you're saying, Matt, but I think that's a logistic and administrative nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with a rule. Like, I think you have to come up with a rule that gets you there. But like, it can't just like $60 for a land use review fee. Like, you just bought somebody's lunch. Like, what are we really talking about there? But I think the fee system should should help support the growth that we're trying to achieve. So if we want to achieve a higher rate of approval and a higher rate of review and faster service and quicker response time, so we can actually grow this state and grow housing, then we need to pay a fee that allows for that to happen. If growth in the state is going to happen, and it's going to come from private industry, but private industry needs government to review and control how that happens. So you have to pay, you got to pay to play, and it has to happen directly. And what the problem is we pay a lot of money in taxes, we pay a lot of money in fees, we pay a lot of money across the board, but that doesn't come back and service the action. It gets squirreled away into somebody's pet project, and it just disappears. Whereas if we reserve these fees, and these fees are real, and these fees are tied to the work, then we can have an expectation that says, hey, I just paid you $2,000 to get this done. I expect it done in 2 weeks. Like, it's a real number tied to a real service. Bob?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I agree with what's being said. I guess the hard part, and going back to sort of John's point, is the money's going to go to the general fund. However we generate money for DPH, it typically goes to the general fund. Now, the assumption is there's an allocation back to DPH to do the training or whatever we set this money aside for. The problem happens is 5 years from now, they forgot why we had the fee. And DPH, we got 2 more staff people because we showed the legislators how we're going to pay for those 2 staff people. And then 5 years from now, the budget gets tight and somebody goes, we're going to get rid of those 2 staff people, but the fee doesn't go away. Just talking about the building permit fee, that's supposed to be training for both building inspectors and the industry. I have not been invited or even heard of training for anybody from a permit fee in 10 years, maybe longer than that. So it sort of just disappeared. No, it could be that the building official doesn't have the staffing to provide the training. Maybe it's happening on the inspector's level, but we're just not seeing it in the industry. So I'm not really sure. There's a disconnect there. So I don't want to like duplicate what they're doing, even though the fee structure sort of makes sense to Jim's point. We just have to kind of figure out the logistics of how it works so that it just doesn't get, it's just another fee we pay to the state, but we get no service for it.
And that's why I think that while it's difficult, I think it's okay to advocate and say, we expect these fees to not go into the general fund. We expect these fees to stay in the departments in which they're being paid. And like, it's easy accounting. We do it every day. Like, I do dollar cost, accounting every day in my business. And it's not hard. I can write them in an Excel spreadsheet. They can they can track it. Like, the math isn't hard. It's just politicians don't like it because then they can't suck from one and dump on another, but I think that we have to strongly advocate for those fees staying with the work that's being accomplished. Jim?
For Adam and Mike, or Matthew, how do we, if we want to establish this, for now, I'm going to say, pay as you play fee. And we want to direct it towards DPH EEP program for training and education. How does that get done? I don't want to go to the general fund. I want to go to a specific avenue and for a specific reason. And that's going to be right now our first hurdle.
I think I've seen in past where there wants to be a dedicated, funding stream for something. They create a separate account that such fee would be deposited into. But also, as Bob said earlier, there's no guarantee that like 2 years from now, facing, the big federal cuts that we're facing, that account doesn't get swept back into the general fund. There's no like, lockbox or so to speak, with any of these. It's ultimately up to the legislature of where any of the fees end up going. I think looking at a lot, DPH across our agency collects a lot of fees, and they all end up going, to the general fund, ranging from, licensing fees for doctors to newborn screening at our lab to, but all of that ends up getting in the general fund, and then and the governor and the legislature negotiate what the final budget is and where those go.
Right. Thank you.
It's hard for a business person to stand here and understand the like, my mind is just like
That's why I'm here.
Matt, before we get off the funding aspect, I think from a local level, it just feels like, and I think you and I both agreed when we heard the numbers that Jim were throwing out, that they were extremely low. And I think that's just something that they can do without there's no legislative requirement. They can charge whatever fee they want. So I think there needs to be something that comes out of this group that just says the local health district should be charging a fee to cover their costs or expenses or some way. I just want to say they should all increase their fees by 20% or something, because there may be towns that are charging way too much. But at least in Jim's area, he's on the low side in my mind. I would pay another $500 if that's what it took to get a system done and approved in a faster manner. Or maybe that's not the right number. Maybe it's $100, but some number.
Jim's about to tell us that his stuff gets swept up into the town general fund just the same way. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and again, sure, we can raise the fee, and then Matt is going to scream and say, I got to send that cost down to the homeowner, and then we're losing sight of trying to keep costs down, but also try to provide a product and inspections that conform to the public health code. As much as I thought about that, do we have a universal subsurface sewage disposal fee across the state of Connecticut? I think that'd be wonderful. That treats everybody equally, but that would not fly, throughout the state. So. Hence the pay for now, until I come up with a different name, the pay to play fee associated with subsurface sewage disposal system would treat everybody, equal across the board.
Right. And remember, I'll say every single time, like, we have to, if we're going to increase the fee, we have to increase the service, meaning that we have to be able to turn these things around faster in order, because time is money. And, I have a homeowner in Easton that went to contract 3 months ago. I still can't get a septic approval. And the problem is they took all their time that they're allowed by law to look at it. They looked at it in the last week. They gave us comments back. Now we gave them the changes. Now they're taking their time to do it again. And they're not taking their time. Not to say that this person is maliciously putting my project behind another one. They're just, this is the piece of paper I got to work on now. This is the piece of paper I got to work on now. And then mine comes back in and it goes back to the bottom. So like I have a homeowner that's very upset. They want to know why we're not digging their house. Well, because I don't have a septic. Well, why don't you start building the house regardless of where this, the septic, well, because like if the septic doesn't get approved, then XYZ. Like it's circular logic on a spreadsheet. So it has to give the ability for production to increase. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what, Matt, I can address your specific because I know the health district very well, the one that you're dealing with, and
Yeah,
they
sorry,
yeah.
I've been really trying to be
No,
not
it's okay.
specific.
Because this is a good example. You know what health departments can do, and some of them do, is they actually some sanitarians can moonlight, so they could actually pay. Let's say it's a review of that plan, so they could you could say I will offer, and maybe local health departments have to get a better process for this. Like you could say I'll pay to have this saying this qualified, phase 1, phase 2 sanitarian, which is the training you need to review, let's say, engineered plans, to do this. And here's the fee. And then that person, can guarantee a turnaround time because they could say, look, I got it. I have X amount of days to do it. So maybe we ought to consider that, like have this thing set up where they have these floater sanitarians that have the training that they can offer their services, but sometimes sort of in an official capacity, perhaps. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking outside the box
I
here.
think that's actually really brilliant. Kind of call it a moonlighting provision, in
Yeah,
which hey, a health department that is really overtaxed can have an extra fee that one you can either use an outside qualified person or you farm it to another health district that might not have a full workload. I don't know if any of those work, but some kind of moonlighting provision that allows for collaboration and maybe even privatization of that review. But that privatization of the review is directed through the town or the health department, not
that's key.
by the builder. Like I don't
That,
get to say, my buddy's going to do it.
agreed. And here's the thing, Matt. I want to keep this, and I don't want to throw engineers under the bus because I'm an engineer myself, but I think it should stay within the government entity. So in other words, these are sanitarians that have the phase 1 and phase 2 training, and there's a pool of them across the state. We have a list of them. And like you said, I like that even farming out to other health departments. That's the way of getting maybe more funds through that. But I think that might be something to really look into. And I always liked that. I thought that was a great idea when towns do that. And then maybe it would give more incentive people to make extra money here, like you just said. But then you can get the guarantee of it's going to get done in 5 days, or whatever.
Yep. I love that. I made the notes for moonlighting provision, and then if let's build off of that. That might be a really solid recommendation.
So
So
would
like
that be, and so that it's good. It's great to hear, Matt, that you'd be open to that, and it would, but assuming sort of the baseline qualifications, right? The
Yes.
sanitarian phase 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I had a question associated with that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah. All right. No, Jim, go ahead.
All right, a couple things. Yes, Chatham Health District, we have hired people to do our restaurant inspections, and we sign there's a contract, an obligation for them to do food service inspections. Okay, and you're right. So now you want to establish this, for subsurface. Now you got to look at contract obligations and all this stuff between that certified sanitarian in phase 1 and 2 and working for those for those health departments and health districts. And then now you got to pay them, and then you got to pay them something that's worth the money. Now the other issue is usually they would be working off hours. How do they attain all the information and the plan review, and where do they do it? I mean, I don't want to sound like a negative Nelly, but I mean the concept. Understand, we have to dive into the concept a little more on how it gets accomplished. So if you're going to do a plan review on a Saturday, they got to make sure that they have all that information and stuff like that. If they want to do an inspection, well, now we got to work out the inspection between the hired gun and the licensed septic installer. So the concept sounds like a good idea. But it's going to have to be refined.
Yeah, and it's voluntary. Like, trust me, my working hours are different than other people's working hours. If a sanitarian calls us and says, "Hey, we'd like to do an inspection on a Saturday morning," I'll have construction manager there and an installer there, and we're ready to go. Like, that's how we roll. Like, we roll 7 days a week, if we have to make the job go. But Bob?
Yeah, I understand, Matt, your position on, wanting it to be within the government entity, but I guess the whole purpose of both the local sanitarian review or local health district review or going to DPH for review is just to get a second set of eyes on it. So if we could get a private entity, and I don't know if there are private sanitarians that aren't working in government, but that have the right qualifications, could they sign off on it? And it would have to be, as Matt said, it would have to be an arm's length transaction. So you can't have your own designer or engineer sign his own plan. But if it was a strict third party that has no, other than getting paid for the review, has no connection to the design of the plan, why couldn't that be done? I mean, they're signing their name, and they're putting their reputation and their license on the line when they sign off and says it meets the health code. Because then
Yeah,
we could go really anywhere with it, and we get a third party. And again, I don't know how many private sanitarians there are, or if engineers can get that sanitation
One, two.
review inspection license, whatever it is. But that would be a good way, because then Matt could call up anybody and go, "Hey, here's a list of all the guys that are in the state that are qualified to do a third party review," and he's going to pay them. And it's a private negotiation, I guess, really. But we come back to the health district and say, "I had Joe, the licensed uh, reviewer, sign off on it. That it's good. You guys don't have to do it. You've got a piece of paper that says this guy's reviewed it just like I would myself, and it's good." And Matt can
Yeah.
move on.
yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So I would do it in two phases. Okay, how about this? We do it this way, given the time, because the first option that we talked about is so doable, and you could set a precedent that this you got an outside entity that comes in, and then once it gets moving forward, because I think with the time constraints that we have, I think what you're saying, obviously, yeah, that's a privatization right there. I think you want to do baby steps. Start with this. You set a precedent because we have time constraints here. I think they can bite onto this easy because we can show other towns there's towns that are actually doing this right now. And then if that works out good, where you have these other entities on the outside doing it, then maybe you could show what you just said. But why yours is going to take a little more time is because they'd have to get certified through us, and our statutory, the way our statutory language is, it talks about the certification for phase 1 and phase 2. They have to be local health department staff. So you'd have to make a statutory change. Whereas what I just talked about, it could work with the existing language. That's all. But good point, though. Good point.
My son could write you a website that could be the septic exchange for the state of Connecticut, where sanitariums with the proper qualifications could go on and just pick up that work, like on an exchange. Hey, I'll do that one for $400, done. And that exchange could exist in 15 minutes with some quick programming, and and then you're only using your government entities to do it, but it's going to happen very quickly. And you know what? Some people are going to make a little bit extra money, which
The
anybody in this room thinks that it's bad for people to make extra money. Uh, Jim, you had your hand up first.
Oh. And you help me out here, Matt. But per section 1913 B103E G1, it says the local director of health shall inspect all SSDS for compliance with the section. So we would have to also figure out how to tie that into that section of the public health code, or that section of the public health code is going to have to get rewritten, and that could be an issue.
Yeah, just one quick thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm thinking more plan reviews, but yes, inspections, but they're the designee though. So part of this contract process would be the local health director would have this person as their designee. And so then that could work within that realm. Good point though, Jim. Good point.
Yeah, Jim, you'd only have to use people who you were comfortable with. You know what I mean? Like that would be up to you to pick the people that would be able to also do your plans. Because while you can contract the work, you can't delegate the accountability. Adam?
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on, I think I'd have to speak with our attorneys to figure out what kind of statutory and regulatory changes we would need to make this work.
Don't bring attorneys into that. It'll just mess it all up.
But also I did want to flag too, there may, I don't know the nitty gritty of these, but it may also be existing labor agreements may come into play here. And I don't know how that may impact any of this. I know, mentioned privatization as a thing, and that's I know that's a whole process. And that's a whole process. I don't know. I've been thinking about overtime and all that, so how that interplays with existing labor agreements. I don't even know where to. Yeah,
Sometimes
that is
throw it in the water and see what happens.
That is a different that is a different area than myself, but I know it's a thing that exists. So
Yeah, Matt, I think we should go with Matt Pollock's idea. Let's do it as a two-step process. We do it within the organization structure we have now, because that can get done quickly. With maybe just a side note that we're going to look at future privatization, whatever you want to call it, but that's not part of the initial recommendation, just so we can move something forward in this area. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And that might be the way that, staying within your labor agreements is, it might be that they get paid overtime, and that fee covers the time and a half or whatever that they're doing it off, doing the plan review off hours, and inspections are still happening normal and all that kind of stuff. But the plan review, you're paying for somebody to do it off time, a time and a half plus, taxes and benefits and everything else that goes into it. But there's got to be a way to navigate that in order to create this urgency. All right, do we want to start another one with 4 minutes left, or we want to kind of stew on our moonlighting provision? I would still like to leave the siloing idea on the table for part of our recommendation. Siloing Matt's area, the department, the DPH. So somebody's specializing and being trained. That way, when we do train somebody, we're training them on their specific area of responsibility and not doing broad training.
So increased specialization within DPH.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm supportive of that. And I guess there's maybe a broader question that I may have missed. The big picture of this is, like big picture, doing some more consolidation of all wastewater reviews within DPH as opposed to DEP also. And
Eventually, yeah.
Like that's a big process thing, but I just want to, flag that.
Yeah. And the idea of a working supervisor, that I think that's really a hard thing to justify. Like, you if you want to develop teams, then you can't have working supervisors in that same sense. And then the last thing was fees tied to the work. You know, if we can, you know, fees tied to work, moonlighting provision, um, working supervisor and silo are the four things that we've kind of come up with so far.
Yeah, I think we need to talk a little bit more in depth about just, what the recommendation is going to be for DPH staffing, the areas of responsibilities in Matt's specific group, and how we make recommendations to take some of those responsibilities away from Matt and not just sort of dump it out there and say, well, DPH, you figure out what's going to happen with it, but Matt's not going to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
I think we have to have sort of what we're asking him to do specifically, maybe.
Or I'm actually good with Matt having to do with it. Just he's not working doing it. He's overseeing all four of those things, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
maybe
that's
our next meeting, we can maybe sort of like refine these a little bit more. Is that, and
That's
okay.
what I'm thinking. Yes, John.
This has been very productive, guys. Thank you.
Yep. And I think we need to just touch real quick, Matt, on some sort of training system. I don't know how you want to do it, but that's just one more bullet point that I think we need to still touch on is whether it's fees, both local sanitarians, installers, engineers, everybody involved in the process,
yep.
and just what that's going to look like.
Training and education.
Yep.
So let's start with that maybe next week. You know, and I know I said in the last meeting when I mentioned the whole work from home thing, but like I don't know how to put this into the universe. And I know you have labor agreements and all that kind of stuff, but you know, if you're trying to create an organization that has retention of knowledge and creation of new leaders and new people, it's very hard to do that remotely. We're doing this on Zoom right now. Zoom mandates that their people are in the office 4 days a week. So the people that create
the Zoom Corporation, yeah,
Zoom Corporation. So like, you know, I think it was a grand experiment, and I think it had a very limited shelf life because you know it's hard to create new talent, and quite honestly, the young people coming into the workforce, we talked about it. It's tough to find the right people to come into the workforce, and they think that they want to be home, but they're never going to be masters of their trade or masters of their knowledge area without sitting face to face with people like Matt and being able to say, I don't understand, you know, and grasping that. So, you know, I know that's a really big thing, and much bigger than this, but I just still like to throw that in the punch bowl and see if it floats, to see what happens. All right, it's 11 o'clock. Anything else?
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, happy
Yep,
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy
Good
Thanksgiving.
conversation.
Nice job.